Welcome back. John Hugg joins us, who specializes in estate planning, business succession planning, and elder law, and is actually a frequent speaker on all these issues and hosts of lots of seminars throughout the Seattle area. Well, welcome back, John. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Thanks, Ben.
Good. Well, you know, do you have an iPad?
I do have an iPad, brand new, in fact.
Really?
Last week, got the iPad 3, or I guess
iPad
it's
3?
just an iPad.
But does he have a Newton?
Do you have a Newton?
I'm sorry, I don't have a Newton, but one of my very first computer was a Macintosh, and it was fantastic.
Yeah.
So, absolutely.
Well, you know, you start thinking about these things, and the Macintosh obviously needed a succession plan.
Yeah.
The Newton, I don't think ever lived, really, so I don't know that it needed a succession plan. But, you know, when you start thinking about how these products kind of grow and fizzle out, same can kind of be true of people in a way. And, you know, you help people. Everybody knows they're going to fizzle out sometime.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you said before that most everybody is going to die. I think it's pretty much a certainty that at some point, everyone.
Life, death, and taxes.
Yes, everyone will, in fact, die. So then you need to figure out what you're going to do or what's going to happen.
So positive, John.
I know. I thought I'd lighten the mood. You know, after jumping all over Apple and everything, and, you know, talking about having, you know, getting a few pennies for your stuff, you know, I thought I'd just
lighten it
be
up a little
uplifting. Yeah.
So, you know, let's talk about probate and the process, because I don't really think a lot of people understand even what it is, let alone if they should be a part of it or how, you know, what the relationship with it could be.
Yeah. Well, before I kind of go into probate and its process and whatnot, it's something last week. I was at an elder law conference, 4-day conference that happened to be actually right here in Seattle. And I was listening to one of the speakers, and they were trying to drive home the point that as elder law attorneys, you want to focus as much, or if not more, on what happens while you're still alive, making sure you've got quality of life and everything, and good health care and all these different things. And as part of that presentation, he basically indicated that a will and what happens after you die really isn't all that important. And at that point, I just sat back and said, well, you know, I can't disagree more with that statement. I mean, if you're talking about being on a path and, you know, wanting to make the right choices, I mean, this would be a choice that you'd want to make to, you know, stay on the right path. And having the estate plan can really, really help out with accomplishing all your goals. So most people have the goal of you know, making things simple. It's one of the things that Apple has done fairly well, is make things fairly simple.
Certainly.
So people want to make their plans simple and be as and have a small burden on their family members, you know, after you're gone. And you want to keep the cost down, and you want to minimize the chance to have infighting between all of your, you know, relatives and siblings and whatnot. So with a good estate plan, you can pretty much walk through the probate process, which is what happens after you die. You know, an estate is created once somebody dies, and then you need to figure out some way to administer that estate to, you know, finish everything off. So what would normally happen is, you know, client would walk into my office, sit down, you know, a loved one had died a few days or a few weeks beforehand, and I would gather some information from them about, you know, the person who died, about the person who's sitting across from me, the assets and liabilities of the estate and all of the heirs and whatnot. Basically pull all that information into some simple documents that you take down at the court, get in front of the court by yourself, basically. And no opposition. Have the judge sign off, rubber stamp type situation. You give notice to all the people who are involved, notice to creditors, and then you start selling assets to liquidate the assets and generate cash. And you pay those creditor claims, if there are any, taxes and any other, any other costs of the estate. And then you divide everything out to, you know, all the individuals who are entitled to share in the estate. Then you file some more paperwork and you're done. You know, everybody's good to go and happy. And it can really be...
Or a little sad, potentially.
Well,
you know.
Some people will be sad, but by the time it's done, you know, they're probably happy.
Okay.
So, and then...
Depending on who died and how much they left them, huh?
Absolutely right, yeah. So that would be sort of a really smooth, simple estate plan, a really smooth, simple probate process, which is what you're trying to do. You know, we want to make it simple. And you can tell I didn't have a lot of lawyer involvement in there. The lawyer was involved at the beginning. The lawyer was involved in, you know, at the beginning and the end. Minimal involvement keeps the cost down. But if you don't have an estate plan, if you don't have anything, you know, anything could happen. So let's take a different situation where you've got say the husband died years ago, mom just passed away, 2 children, and for whatever reason, neither of them wants the other to be in control of mom's estate. So now they both get a lawyer and both go in to try to, argue out who should be controlling. Well, it's already more expensive than my initial scenario, and it's more complicated without a doubt. You're already fighting. So those goals, you're not accomplishing your goals in that situation. An even more problematic and even more, in my opinion, tragic situation, if you've got a young family, minor children, something happens to both mom and dad, no will. So now we don't know who is to take care of those children. And now you've got the parents of both of the deceased individuals vying to raise the grandchildren. And they're going at it. So that's definitely going to be more expensive and more complicated and certainly more unfortunate. So those are some scenarios where if you don't have that plan in place, it can be a lot more challenging, a lot more costly than if you do have it in place.
So, you talk about putting this plan in place. As a young family, is that, if you're 19 years old, you probably don't need one.
Probably not.
But at some point in time, is it when you become a young family? Is that when you start?
Well, you can start as early as 18. All you have to be is 18 years of age to have a valid will. However, for most people, when most people really start to take it seriously is when you have kids. And that's when you want to really focus on getting your estate plan put together, having your will done. And the reason, of course, is to make sure those kids are taken care of. The will is the primary vehicle in the state of Washington where you can select your guardian. And that selection in the will be honored and respected by the court, unless for some reason the person that you're nominating is not fit to serve. Otherwise,
what if they don't want to?
Well, then hopefully you have an alternate. So, and that's what the lawyer should be doing.
That kid's kind of a troublemaker.
Well, that's entirely possible, and that's why you go to the lawyer, and when the lawyer will advise you, well, you should have an alternate. You should have an alternate executor, an alternate guardian, alternate trustees, and everything. Sometimes multiples. A lot of people don't think about that. So
yeah, well, and hopefully you have a conversation beforehand. Hopefully.
Yeah. Well, hopefully everybody has a conversation about what they want and how to do it. And I think that's kind of the thing. You really want to think through what you want to do. And you want to make things easy on your family. You want things to go smoothly. You don't want fights. You don't want a will contest. If you've got something that's going to create a will contest where they're going to be challenging the validity of the will, usually that's somebody that's been cut out or a surprise addition to the family that you never knew about. Those types of things are going.
And you're talking about the busty blonde.
Yes, in fact, I am.
The Anna Nicole Smith of the world, right?
Smith is that's the perfect example of everything that you're trying to plan for in terms of estate planning. You want to address that all the time.
Right. We're here with John Hugg of Hugg and Associates Estate Planning. So, John, we have about a minute left before we have to go to break. But so, this planned estate, you include people in the conversation. And it really, I guess, you say rest in peace. This is kind of one of those pieces of the rest in peace almost.
Well, absolutely. Yes.
You talk about the infighting. You talk about kids fighting. You talk about families fighting.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody wants to burden people more.
That's absolutely right. And all of my clients are saying, well, we want to make it as simple and easy as possible. We don't want this stuff. And all of my clients who are currently fighting, you can see where they made the mistakes. They should have addressed how to deal with personal property a little bit better because, one person gets the car and the other person gets something different and they're not of equal value. And then the person who feels slighted wants something more. You could have addressed that in your estate plan to make sure everything comes out equally. Or, I guess if you don't want to, what you're
Or, yeah, I guess so. Yeah, well, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Not only financially, but for the emotion. It's a tough time to be in. And, when you're in a tough time having a straight path and knowing, in that case, I talked about making choices. Mm-hmm. At some point in time, if mom or dad passes away, it's easier sometimes not to make choice, to have those choices made for you. And this would be one of those times, I think.
Yeah.
John, thanks so much for joining us. Stick around till after our break. Everybody's coming back, including Heather. You know why? Because Apple makes apps and Heather makes questions. She's going to ask them when we come back.